I would add if I went back there, going up the Lake Como Road is delightful.
Welcome to the Greens and Blues 14er podcast. This episode, Zach channels his inner Kurosawa. I sit and meditate on a rock, and we bring in my buddy Travis, and we talk about the experience that all three of us had together hiking Mount Lindsey. Zach, how's it going today, my friend?
Oh, just another hot and delicious day in Norman, Oklahoma.
Delicious. What?
The summer is moving apace. I don't know if I mentioned this on the pod. I've been sorting my old baseball cards.
Oh, that's right. We've talked about that.
Yeah, I'm just about done. If anyone, by the way, out there wants to purchase a lot of baseball cards from the late 80s, early 90s, the so-called junk wax era, please email us at greensandbluespodcast@gmail.com, and I am happy to hand those over to you for a small
Ask
fee.
Zach about his Robin Yount collection and
Oh my God.
see where that takes you.
You know, this is what happens when you're a lifelong contrarian. All my friends were into Ken Griffey Jr. or,
Of course, yeah.
of course, right? Who wouldn't be?
Yeah.
Or Mark McGuire or whatever.
Canseco,
I
all
decide
those.
to pick some rando, very good baseball player from the Milwaukee Brewers, who I could never even watch as a kid. I don't even know why I was doing this. I'm like, I'm going to collect Milwaukee Brewers sets and Robin Yount. So I have this massive Robin Yount baseball card collection.
Oh, it's so good.
I have literally, I think, every card of his ever made except his 1975 Topps rookie card. But
No, wait, really?
yes,
That's a collection right
yes,
there.
way. And I have even two books commemorating his 3,000th hit. If
There's
anyone's
books
interested,
about that? What?
like little Robin Yount books that they published in Milwaukee for his when he got his 3,000th hit. Yeah,
Oh my
I've got
gosh.
two of them.
That's a riot.
And so if anyone wants that too, I'll throw that in for $45.
Just
But
unloading everything.
yeah, it's,
Uh,
it's a, everything must go.
That's so good.
So I've been doing that this summer. Eric, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. The weather here is, I would say for Colorado, it's warm to hot. It's in the, 80s, pushing 90. It's very dry. It's like I'm going to sit here and complain about it and then rue the fact that I'm complaining about it as I talk to my friend who's in Oklahoma and suffering through everything you're suffering through. So other than that, things are going well. Zach, what are we going to talk about this episode?
We should not bury the lead here because I think our conversation takes a little bit of time. We're going to be talking about Mount Lindsey, a peak that you and I and your friend Travis
Yep.
did about 4 or 5 years ago. It was right before it closed, actually.
Yeah, literally like weeks before it closed.
Yeah, I think we did it and we kind of like shut the door on the way out. So,
Sorry, the rest of Colorado that we did that to you.
we had a very interesting experience here, and Eric, in the lead into this, made a reference to Akira Kurosawa. If anyone has seen the movie Rashomon, that's how I envisioned this episode unfolding. It's three different stories told from three different perspectives of a common thing. So we've got me telling my story, we've got Eric telling his story, and then Eric's friend Travis telling his story. And somewhere in the middle lies the truth, my friends, of what it's like to hike Mount Lindsey.
What a
Do you have,
tease.
yeah, do you have anything you want to add to that, Eric?
No, that's a perfect introduction, and I hope that we accomplished what you just described. I think we did. I think we told three very unique perspectives on Lindsay.
Well, as long as there's not a murder involved, which
Yeah,
is
that
what
would be ideal.
what the original film involves, I think we've done well here, my friend. So without further ado, here is our interview slash trip report on Mount Lindsey with the three of us.
Well, Zach, we're here today with a very special guest, someone I haven't seen in a while, but the three of us have tackled the mountain that we're going to talk about today. So we wanted to invite on my buddy Travis. Travis, how's it going this morning?
All right. Good to see you, Eric, Zach.
good to have
It's
you
been a
on,
minute,
and
Travis. It's been a few
I
years
know.
since the last time I saw you was at the trailhead of Mount Lindsey. So
Yeah.
good to check in today.
How long ago was it now? 5 years?
That was
6?
is 2022 or 2021, Eric?
I think it was 21.
Okay.
And if I recall right, we went after Lindsay just a few weeks before it closed. So
Yes, we did. So it was a very auspicious time because, yeah, we went. I remember coming home and logging my trip and then noticing immediately thereafter that Lindsay was closed to public access. So that was not a big turnaround on that. And I remember feeling really grateful that we got there when we did. And then it was closed for the next 2 or 3 years after that to public access. So.
yeah.
Yeah, I heard you guys talking about how it was closed now and you need permits to get in there. Same with Quandary.
The Decalibron requires waivers similar
Okay.
to. I've gone to the
Yeah.
website. Lindsay and Decalibron require waivers. Quandary does require a permit, but that's for a different reason. That's only because it's so crowded and everyone wants to do it that the town of Breckenridge has had to figure out how to kind of manage all of the traffic. So, but yeah, Quandary does have a permit for another reason.
Okay.
Just so listeners know, you don't have to file in advance. They are permits you could get on site. I know with Decalibron, and I also believe with Lindsay, you could just download a QR code with both, and it has like a little online form that you fill out. I may be speaking out of turn here with respect to Lindsay, but I'm pretty sure that you can just do it on site in both instances. And so it just denying them liability for any injury that may occur on the mountain. They're not actually gatekeeping permits or anything like that, like only 10 people a day can go or anything like that. So, and as we found out on Mount Lindsey, injury could actually happen. So we'll get into that later.
Yeah. Well, before we get into Lindsay, so Travis, you are the one that got me into 14ers in the first place. Thank you very much. You're the one that got me addicted to this whole Colorado mountain thing. I was curious, do you want to share a little bit about how you got your start in the mountains? Because I started at like the age of 34, 35-ish. You started much, much earlier in your life. Do you want to share a little bit about how the mountains have affected you and how you got into mountaineering?
Sure. So I had a youth pastor. I grew up in Michigan, and I had a youth pastor. He wasn't the typical Mountain Dew all-nighter pizza party kind of guy. He was an older youth pastor, and he gathered a group of kids, and he said, we're going to do a year of meditation and reflection, and you're going to have wilderness experiences. And he gave me the book by Thomas A. Kempis, like a 13th century monk on meditation. He took us out to Colorado. You know, the first trip was actually not a 14er, it was a 13er. It was a day, it was supposed to be a day hike. We were starting at Cottonwood Pass and we were going to hike Turner Peak. So this day trip, it was actually kind of a harrowing experience. You know, it was a group of all of us. And I had no experience. I'm a flatlander. I hadn't traveled a whole lot. So them telling us how to prepare, you know, I had my Jansport backpack and they said pack a lunch, but I didn't pack a lunch. I was like, oh, well, it'll be like having a picnic. It was not a picnic. So, you know, I was only like 14 years old. Found out halfway up the peak, I didn't have a lunch. Some people shared a lunch with me. We actually summited Turner Peak, and then he was going to have us hike down the backside of it and come out. There's a trailhead that goes up to Browns Pass. Basically, we hiked down the backside of Turner Peak, but some people were glissading and actually got injured. Long story short, we got separated from the group. We're lost overnight. They emergency evacuated the rest of our group out 2 o'clock in the morning. By a miracle, another kid got out, hitchhiked into Buena Vista. Rescue team came in at 2 o'clock in the morning. We ran into a group from Noah's Ark Rafting Company who kept us overnight. If they hadn't been there, we would have been hiking even farther into Texas Basin because we took a left turn at the Hartenstein Lake trailhead and hiked over Browns Pass, which is the Continental Divide, which is going out into the middle of nowhere. If we had turned right, we would have hit the trailhead. So yeah, that was our experience, and it was the early '90s.
First experience.
Yeah, one of the girls broke her back. She had like a compress. I don't remember exactly what the injury was, but she was discharged. We drove home in a van. She was on a foam pad the whole way home. It was the early '90s, so nobody got sued. The parents didn't even know what was going on because there was no cell phones. We got home and told the whole story, and the very next year, the same youth leader took all of us back out to the exact same area, and we all hiked Mount Yale together.
Yeah.
He didn't get fired. No one was sued. No PTSD was reported.
Wow.
So,
That I'm so glad you bring. Well, that's a harrowing story, by the way. But I'm so glad you bring that up, Travis, and we haven't really talked about this. So many people's first experience of Colorado mountains is through church youth groups. Eric and I last year hiking Half Peak saw a huge youth group doing Half Peak, backpacking, and then stopping and doing peaks along the way. They look like they're having a good old time, and they look like they were well prepared, but sometimes I see youth groups and I'm like, wow, they don't have any idea what they're in for. A lot of the time they're from states like yours and mine, Oklahoma or Texas or Illinois or Michigan or somewhere, and they're just out there hiking in jeans and sneakers and hoping for the best. So your first 14er experience was up Yale. Was this significantly better, or had we learned from the travails of previous years?
well, there were no accidents. He still didn't pack any helmets for us. We hiked up the same trailhead that the rescue party had been staged at, and
You got to scout it the previous year.
so it was actually kind of fun. I was like, the whole way up, it's like, this is where I made the wrong turn last year, and so that was kind of cool. I kind of look at it like a pilgrimage I'd like to take my kids on someday. Yeah, because Turner Peak was a bushwhack. Anyways, Yale, we hiked in, we stayed overnight, we set up camp at the base of the mountain after hiking up over the ridge. I remember it was 4th of July, it snowed, and that was kind of a novel experience, first time experiencing snow in July. Seeing that snow burst come through was a memorable experience. Heard coyotes, saw a porcupine. I remember being at the top, just seeing mountains forever.
Yeah.
So yeah, we hung out for quite a while at the top, but that was back in '93. So I didn't climb another 14er until '98, Pikes Peak, when I was out in Colorado Springs at Focus on the Family. So
would you say in '93 were you hooked? Or
No.
was it just okay? No, so it wasn't. A lot of people, it's the first experience, and they're good. They are like ready to go, but not with Travis.
yeah, so I've climbed 30 peaks, but from '93 to probably 2000, I had only climbed 2. And then in grad school, I had a buddy who wanted to do that, and then we started hitting it hard. We were going out there every summer during grad school and knocking out anywhere from 3 to 5 every trip for a while. So we did that for like 5-6 years. Then it started to taper off, but I still want to. The last ones will be the ones that are more likely to kill me. You know how it goes.
Yeah, I think a lot of people kind of save those for last. And
Yeah.
maybe they should be up front when you don't even know what you're getting yourself into. Maybe that's
Right.
what Mr. Youth Minister should have done, is take you guys up Capitol Peak and do the knife edge. Wow, so that's quite the journey. So we did Lindsey as a group together, the 3 of us. Was that the last peak you've done, or have you done any since then?
That was the last 14er I've done.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to call it a peak, but we took a trip to South Dakota and my family climbed Black Elk Peak.
Oh, cool.
Which is the highest point in South Dakota.
Hey, there's a list for that.
That's
It was-
cool for sure.
Yeah, it was fun. It was elevation of 8,000 something. It was definitely climbing a mountain. I'd say maybe 2,000 feet elevation gain.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's more
Yeah.
than you get here in Oklahoma.
Yeah. I wanna take the family out next year and introduce the kids to 14ers. I'm thinking of climbing Evans or Blue Sky and doing the high ridge circuit.
Might I suggest a 13er hike where you have a different start and a different ending, and you don't give any guidance to your family on where to go at certain really critical points in the journey? Maybe that's the way to start, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Let's just bushwhack.
Exactly. Yeah,
What
kids
could
with
go
no
wrong?
orienteering skills, bushwhacking.
Yeah.
That is, I found that's the way to really get it going. Doing glissading to no one that's ever done self-arrest before sounds awesome.
We didn't even have ice axes. We had no way to self-arrest.
So all of that, Travis, leads into eventually in 2021, you agree, hey, maybe we should all try and go after Mount Lindsey.
Mm-hmm.
So what was it specifically, I guess this is for all of us, what was it specifically about Mount Lindsey that attracted each of us to say, hey, we should go after this 14er?
Well, I can say for me, having completed all the Front Range, Saywatch, 10 Mile, and Mosquito, the next range on the list was the Sangres. And Eric, you and I had done the combo a year or two before of Blanca and Ellingwood. And so just wanting to tackle more of the Sangres, it was in that group. So just wanted to tackle that.
Zach, what was it about Lindsey that attracted you to it?
I've been more fixated on it for quite a while. Growing up in New Mexico and also now living in Oklahoma, basically anytime I would drive from Oklahoma to Colorado, I would pass by Lindsey. And growing up in New Mexico and going to college in Colorado, anytime I would go to college, I would drive past Lindsey. And I've looked at it my whole life. Always wanted to hike it. I had heard good things about the Huerfano Valley, and turns out they are correct. So yeah, I was drawn to it. I had done Blanca and Little Bear, 16 years previous with a friend of mine. I really enjoyed the experience on those peaks and looking over at Lindsey. So yeah, it had been more of a kind of long-time fascination, and when you guys suggested it, I was ready to go. So how about yourself, Eric?
Yeah, I think depending on how you look at the difficulty of Lindsey, I think it used to be considered kind of class 2+. I think Middlebrook calls it 3- now. I'm not sure why the difference has come in. Maybe that gully is a little looser now with traffic. Who knows? But
maybe on the trip that we took.
Maybe we and we'll talk about maybe some of these whack-a-moles from Ohio that came after us on the trail that were kicking rocks down. But either way, Travis, you and I had done longs. That was my first. It was the only class 3 I've ever done. Done plenty of 2+ since then. Travis, you mentioned Blanca and Ellingwood we've done. Zach, you and I have done Castle and Conundrum. We've done Mount Hope, which is a 13er, and the Saguache that's 2+-ish. So I've done 2+, kind of whatever the gradient is between 2+ and 3-. I haven't quite made back that jump yet up into anything related to class 3. So when I looked at Lindsey, I thought, okay, this one might be, the round trip's a little on the shorter side. Maybe class 3 might be in my future again. So I was hoping that would kind of be the case. And as we'll find out, it was not the case for me. So as far as getting to Mount Lindsey, how do you get to the Lily Lake Trailhead? Who wants to go through that?
you drive there. This is the subject of a lot of discussion on 14ers.com, whether or not it is drivable in a Subaru.
Yeah.
And we have a Subi scale for this. So there are two different trailheads on the road into the Huerfano Valley. There's the lower Lily Lake trailhead and the upper Lily Lake trailhead. Getting to the lower Lily Lake trailhead is doable basically in anything with more clearance than a sedan. So a crossover, a Buick Encore, a RAV4, any Subaru, you don't even need all-wheel drive for it. Getting to the lower trailhead is easily doable, and you can find instructions on how to do so on 14ers.com and Jerry Roach's books and so forth. That trailhead only has room for like 1 or 2 passenger cars, and it is not easy to find. You have to set your trip odometer, go by the 10th of the mile, because otherwise you will not find it. Most people to do Lindsey carry on from there to the upper trailhead, which is about 1.5 miles up from the lower trailhead. That requires, I would offer, at least all-wheel drive and at least the clearance of a Subaru, which is 9 inches. That last section of road is rougher and steeper than the preceding few miles of dirt road that go to the lower trailhead, and then the 15 miles of very nice paved and then groomed dirt road that go towards lower Lily Lake trailhead. So I would offer it's Subiable. If you're driving a Forester like me and Eric were at the time, you're gripping it a little tighter through there, but it's very doable. There will be some slippage in the all-wheel drive in a couple places. It's a little gravelly. Pretty much the standard and only trailhead, unless you're coming over from Blanca and Little Bear, and then you're not listening to this podcast, is doable, but probably at the edge of the traction and gradient capabilities of a Forester or Outback.
And somehow we got 2 Foresters up there, even with
Yeah.
all that difficulty.
Yeah, and we actually camped kind of down about, I don't know, maybe 300 yards from the trailhead, and where you guys picked, the spot you guys picked was actually harder to get into than getting up the road. So there are a few camping opportunities. There's a ton of camping opportunities all along the road going up into that valley. There's a fair amount of private property there. There's a state park that's lower down. You can camp there as well, and then just drive up the next day if you need to. But we were able to camp kind of close to the trailhead. An idea that I had, because I saw people doing it, was folks were driving up to the trailhead, the upper trailhead, and backpacking in about a mile into these beautiful meadows in the Huerfano Valley. And if you're of that persuasion, I highly suggest that. That valley is gorgeous, takes away the difficulty of, maybe not finding a campsite, and that was really, really pretty. So definitely doable, and definitely has some spots to camp at if you need it.
For sure. Travis, any thoughts on the road up besides the cows that we mooed at on the way up to the trailhead?
No, honestly, the only thing that I really remember is once we pulled into the campsite and seeing the beautiful view of the mountain in the distance, which was, I actually thought that was going to be Lindsey, but Lindsey was to the left of that. You couldn't see it from where we were camping, but I loved the view, just seeing the high ridges. Being a passenger, didn't have to pay much attention.
Yeah, we'll probably say it again, but that Huerfano Valley is stunning. It's worth returning to, whether you're hiking a peak or not. Just going there is totally worth it. It's beautiful. So
that's one feature. Like you guys, I know you guys talk about places to eat. One feature that I think would be interesting is places to fish. Because that's been one of the better experiences I've had. Is if you bring a fly rod and hit one of the streams. Sometimes that can be really good fishing for trout, and you can catch yourself some lunch or dinner. But I don't know if there was anything like that around there. I think the streams were a little bit farther removed from where we were camping.
Yeah, they're down in a canyon there. But if you go up the valley or further down the valley, you have probably stream fishing, and then I don't know if they stock the lakes up there. Lily Lake or some of those other lakes, sometimes they helicopter stock those with brook trout or cutthroat. But yeah, even if you didn't catch anything, it'd be a beautiful spot.
All right, so we're at the trailhead, or for the three of us, we were just down from the trailhead. We found like a nice little nook in the trees to park at and camp at. So we're sleeping overnight. We're getting up early. What's the hike towards? Maybe we start with the hike towards the saddle between Lindsey and Iron Nipple. That's kind of where things changed for us. So getting to the saddle, what was that like?
I remember it being a long, fairly flat approach, up until the saddle. I mean, towards the very end, you get some elevation towards that saddle, but otherwise it was like a meadow hike, as I recall it.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I suggested to Eric that for this episode that we take our inspiration from an Akira Kurosawa film called Rashomon, where it's a story told in three ways. Each person tells their own story. It's about a brutal event, because I thought we would have different perspectives on this. So Travis says flat, gentle, relatively easygoing up until the saddle before you really get down to business on the peak. And for me, I remember a fair amount of that flatness, but then before you get to the saddle, I remember going up this ridiculous dirt slope, basically kind of going up the mountainside, and the trail was not good. It was highly eroded. I remember that being like, holy crap, like we're just going straight up this thing. This was before the saddle. So
yeah, that's what I was referring to, like the elevation change. I remember there's that long approach across the meadow, and then it's like...
Yeah. And no one can see this, but Travis's hand was flat, and then it went perpendicular. So I really remember that of the approach, like just a beautiful hike through some meadows and along some streams, and I think you cross the stream a couple times, and then like, oh my gosh, we're going straight up, and this trail stinks. It felt very much like a 13er hike, Travis. So, Eric, what was your experience of the first little bit of this trail?
Yeah, combination of both you guys. So I remember kind of going through the forest for a while. Zach, you may have mentioned something about skunk cabbage or something kind of strange plant-like substance along the side of the trail.
Quite a bit of it.
Yeah, and a lot of it. And then, the meadow. And then I remember we were talking about Roach's description of this steep incline that you go on. I think he described it as a grassy ramp. And I think there may have been a very short debate during our hike as to whether that was truly a grassy ramp or just a true incline, like a steep slope that we were going up. I think we felt like Roach was downplaying it a little bit by calling it a grassy ramp, but in
Jerry's day, it was grassy, and it has since eroded into the mess that we found ourselves in.
It may have been trampled out eventually, but that was not an enjoyable part of the hike, to get from kind of the final base of that incline up to the saddle where we finally realized, wow, I don't know when this started, but it started getting really windy at some point during this whole excursion. I remember we get to the saddle between Lindsey and Iron Nipple, which is I think it's an unranked 13er next to Lindsey. We get to that saddle, and it's really windy, and I remember Zach was leading, and Zach turns around and said, all right, guys, we need to have a talk.
Yeah. So you go up that grassy ramp, and then there's another flat spot, and it's a glorious flat spot with amazing views of Lindsey and Blanca, serrated knife edge ridge in between Lindsey and Blanca, and then Iron Nipple. You're kind of embraced by these mountains, and then you kind of turn to the west and go straight west for a bit, and then you work your way up this ridge towards the saddle in between Iron Nipple and Mount Lindsey. I was actually somehow had gotten about 30 feet in front of you guys, and I remember going up this ridge towards the saddle and just being hit with, having now done our experience on Trinchera, at the time I was like, Those are the strongest winds I've ever felt. Now I'm like, not too bad. But probably 40-mile-an-hour winds, and they were really galing, and at a certain point, I had to like go low just to not get blown around. Yeah, I remember wondering, hey, if this keeps up, do we want to keep going? And so I stopped to have a chat with Travis and Eric at that point, like, do we really want to do this? Travis, very resolute, was like, yeah. Travis, your memories.
I honestly don't remember the wind. Like that's not something that's stuck in my memory from that peak. I remember, this might be getting ahead of you guys, but I just remember the climbers' trails started to kind of fade out more, and it was more like rock hopping up to the top of the ridge. And once you got to the top of the ridge, seeing down into that valley was epic. But yeah, I don't recall the wind.
That's so interesting. This really is like a Kurosawa film. Once you get to the ridge, I think, to use an old Roach phrase, your difficulties become apparent.
The introduction is over.
The introduction is over. Right there, you have a decision to make, and I think a lot of people are starting to make a different decision than the one we did. You can either at that point, and you can see both routes, they're apparent. You can stay ridge direct and go up the north ridge that starts at and stays at class 3. Or you can cut to the left, so right before you start to funnel up that ridge, you can cut to the left and there's a gully, and you can see this from the ridge. It's very apparent. There is a gully that bisects or cuts through the northeast facing aspect of Mount Lindsey. We chose that one. That's the quote unquote standard route. It's class 2+. We can have some debates on what the heck it actually is here in a minute. I do remember us sitting there and kind of pondering that route for a moment and wondering, what the heck are we going to go the ridge, or are we going to go up that gully? Because that gully did not look great.
It looked daunting.
It looks bad, and it's Sneffels-esque for those of you that have done Sneffels. It's harder than the last few pitches on Uncompahgre. It's a little bit steeper and plowed out in terms of like the scree has been moved around. It's very loose and cobbly, and you can even see that before you even get into it.
Yeah.
We decided to stay on the standard route. I'll let Eric take it from there.
Yeah, and I think it's important, Zach, you mentioned it. The route that we took in the gully has traditionally been the standard route because it is known as the easiest route. It's not class 3, it's whatever it is, 2+ or 3-, however you want to call it. But I think the more that people are doing Lindsey again, the more that I'm seeing people just do the ridge directly and go through the class 3 route, which maybe it's a little harder. It's got some more exposure, certainly, but from what I'm reading, the rock is a lot better. It's a lot more stable. It's a lot firmer. It's not as loose and, should I say, unpredictable as the gully proved to be. So, yeah, we took the route that has been standard, and maybe it won't be standard for much longer. Who knows?
I would offer that the North Ridge route is harder, but safer. Actually, I think Travis, near the end of our hike, ended up kind of doing parts of the North Ridge route just to avoid some of the difficulties that were inherent to where we were at, and also some of the yahoos that were coming up and down our trail. So, Eric, what was your experience? So we go to the saddle, we fight through the wind for a minute, and then the wind magically just goes away, and we start to go up this gully. What was your experience of the gully like?
Yeah, at the top of the gully is where the three of us ended up going our separate ways. But going up the gully, I remember it felt like it was steep. I felt like it was, for me, it felt exposed to some extent. The wind would come and go. It would die out, and then it would come, and then I felt like it would come strong enough to where it felt like it was pulling me off the mountain or trying to pull me off of that gully. It wasn't really trying to do that, but that's how it felt at the time. So I'm just, kind of every step is feels grueling. I'm using my hands to kind of pull myself up. It ended up, by the time I got to the top of the gully, I was spent. I was 100% done. I had nothing left in me. And so by the time we were done, I just decided my knees are shaking, partially because I'm scared of the exposure and the wind that's coming through, and partially because I'm just stinking tired. And so we got to the top of the gully, 13.7, 13.8-ish, and I just said, I'm going to plop my butt down here, and I'm just going to hang here for as long as I can. And it was a beautiful day, even though it was windy at times. It was a bluebird day, and so there were hardly any clouds that I remember. And so I just sat at the top of the gully and ate my trail mix for a long, long time. And that's my story.
So Travis, your tale from the gully up.
I know that you're asking me for a song later, but I have just one lyric from a separate song for that gully moment. It was actually Grateful Dead, Casey Jones, trouble ahead, trouble behind, and you know that notion just crossed my mind.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we got to the notch. I remember just you making the decision to hunker down, and at that point, it was pretty well established. I was, like I said, I'm a flatlander. I don't do these things very often, and so you guys were considerably faster than I was, but I know my pace, and so I just remember, Zach, you said, well, I'm going to go this way, and I was like, well, I just kind of found my own route. Looking at 14ers.com, it said from the notch, you would kind of go straight ahead for a little while before you started angling right. Mm-hmm. Well, I went straight right, and I went up. That was described as more class 3 route finding. That's the path I took. So it was a lot of, scrambling up boulders. I would say similar to the crux of lungs, but lots of those types of moves. Definitely more climbing than hiking.
Was it class 3? Like, is that where you would say, okay, this is firmly class 3?
I mean, I'm not a great gauge of the difference there. I'm pretty good at route finding. I never was in a situation where, if I fell, I was going to fall 10 feet, Yeah, I'd say class 3 because, I was using my hands to pull me up around some boulders, but I never had 5 feet between my feet and the ground.
How much harder than the gully was that final push for you?
It was steeper. There wasn't any scree. It was large boulders that I was scrambling around and over. So I'd say maybe I gained 200-300 feet, not straight up. Significantly steeper than the gully, I think.
Okay. So yeah, we get to the top of the gully. I stay there. Travis, you turn right. Zach, you go straight. What was it like going straight?
So I should say the gully itself, that will become the subject of some discussion in a minute. Going up the gully there's a good reason you felt the way you did, Eric, because that was steep. I wouldn't say exposed was how I felt. It was dangerous, though. The possibility of rock fall through there is really high. I would offer, Travis mentioned helmets earlier, I would offer that having a helmet would be advisable in that spot. And so the way we did it, I was leading, is I would go across or up the gully while Eric and Travis were in a place of safety. I would go up where if I kicked a rock, I wouldn't kick a rock down onto them. And I would go up for 10 or 15 feet, and then they would then go up and meet me, and then we would just kind of keep repeating that process going up. Anyone that goes in there will know that there's just a lot of potential for rock fall, maybe slip sliding a little bit. So we were going up it pretty slow and carefully. And then I remember getting to the top of it, and there's a little notch at the top of it. And that's where Eric decided to have a picnic. He picked a really good little perch. And I remember us deliberating there before violating the cardinal rule of hiking, which is we all left each other. And I said, well, I'm going to take the standard route because I kind of saw where the standard route went at that point. And Travis said, I think I'm going to go up this way because I think you were done with the scree at that point and the dinner plates.
I can't remember why we split up. Like, I don't feel like we made a decision to split up.
Well, I remember Eric saying, guys, I'm done. And then and then we had like that moment of like, well, you know, he's like, but you guys should go on without me. And I was like, well, I think this is the way. I said, I think I'm going to go this way. And I think, I don't think it was much of a decision. I think Travis said, and then I'm going to go this way.
I think that I was route finding. I lost sight of you and I just started.
That's right.
So
you just kind of started going up.
Yeah.
We did what we say you shouldn't do. We got separated, and we actually stayed separated for quite some time here. I went on to what is, I guess, 14ers.com will call the standard route, which is you kind of move deliberately south from this notch. It kind of goes up, and it's more of a traverse across some pretty crappy scree, and then eventually you cut right and go up the face of the mountain a little bit. I found that route finding to be fine. I think for me, the crux of the route was actually that gully. After that, it was more exposed in a couple places, but your difficulties were more obvious. The potential for rockfall wasn't as bad. So for me, from where Eric stopped and was picnicking I think it only took me about 25 or 30 minutes to get to the top from there. And I remember being really worried about Eric. And I remember being like, we shouldn't be separated. I got to do that. I'm going to tag this and get back. And so I was kind of burning. I was moving very rapidly through all these little moves and stuff and making maybe too quick decisions, but ended up kind of summiting pretty quickly from there. I don't remember the summit very well. I took a couple pictures, and then I was like, I got to get back to Eric because I know he wasn't feeling it. And so I took my pictures. I had the summit to myself. I probably should have hung out there longer. So I looked around. I was like, wow, this is great. What a beautiful day. And then I booked it back to Eric. And that's where I think the story for Eric and me gets really interesting because I kind of fly back to Eric. I make it back to him where he's just chilling in his perch. Then from there, Eric, we experience the gentleman callers from Ohio. Do you want to take it from there? Because all this while, cut to scene, Travis is still working the ridge. He's going for the summit. I decide to have a real lunch. So we're hanging out. And then what happens, Eric?
So, you reference, Zach, these guys from Ohio, and we know they're from Ohio because they were proud of their heritage. And so they are coming up the gully, they get to us, and they actually end up turning to the right and going the way that Travis did.
They do, yeah.
There's a very significant difference between how Travis did it and the Ohio guys did it. When
Yes.
Travis was going up, it was very calm. There was no rockfall whatsoever. Travis was choosing his steps carefully and figuring out, okay, here's where I'm supposed to go, and there was no consequence of his steps. These other guys, that was not the case. They were just kind of dawdling up and just kind of randomly putting their feet wherever they wanted to, and there were rocks getting kicked down on us left and right. And not only us, so where this notch is, there was, for lack of a better way to describe it, if a rock was coming down from that direction, there was kind of this backstop of rock that would stop those rocks from coming down, but then any rockfall would turn and go directly down into the gully. And
it was like a funnel.
It was. The rocks were just going directly down into, if anyone was coming up the gully, they were going to get smacked by these rocks. And so I feel like I was constantly yelling down, rock! And then 5 seconds later, rock! And just having to constantly warn people.
These morons were kicking huge blocks down into the gully. Right before they topped out at the notch, one of them kicked a pretty good-sized rock down that I don't know how it didn't hit his friends. And then when they got up there, they paused and kind of celebrated being Buckeyes or whatever for a minute. And then they started up on this Goofus and Gallant journey up to the ridge. And I remember them asking me, like, hey, because I'd been on the summit at that point, what's the route? And I said, the route is over there. And I said, that's the way to go. It was the way that I had gone. And they said, yeah, no, I think we're going to go this way. I was like, okay, knock yourself out. And I said, be careful, though, that rock looks a little loose. And they start up this, and they start immediately kicking huge rocks. I don't know how we didn't get hit, Eric. I remember in particular them kicking a at minimum microwave size block. Like, it hit below us, and it goes through the gully, caterwauling, just like end over end, and like breaking apart. If anyone had been in the gully at that point, it would have killed them.
Yeah.
I would say that that's one of the primary dangers of that gully is stupid people that don't know what they're doing and not displaying any awareness of their environment. And so you and I watched this, Eric, and we had considered descending, and we were like, we're not descending until these yahoos are way up on that ridge, because otherwise they're going to kill us. And so we just sat there for a while longer and watched them kick a few more rocks down this gully. I think there were some people that were actually trying to come up at a certain point behind the Buckeye contingent, and they had a few rocks kind of fly past them there. It was pretty harrowing. I'm glad we weren't in there, because that would have been really a bad situation. So that highlights, I think, one of the primary dangers of the gully coombe ridge route, where you go up the gully and then you go ridge, then you're potentially kicking rocks down into the gully, which is what we saw. Yeah, no shade on the fine people of Ohio, but these guys were absolute boneheads. They get a negative inverted ice axe from me today, because that was scary. So
is that a new rating system we have? Is
I think so.
Ice axes for...
Yeah, they get an inverted ice axe. They can sit on it. Those guys were dangerous, and they could have killed somebody. And that was not cool what I witnessed that day. And they were kind of ne'er do well. They were like, "Oh, this is good." And then they kicked down a rock, and they're like, "Oh, look at that." And they were having a good old time doing it, but pretty scary. So that's what you missed, Travis. Well,
yeah, I can't remember where they were in proximity to me as I was climbing up.
They're behind you for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They were actually well behind you. You were well ahead of them.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think you kind of showed up about 20 minutes after they had gone on their merry way. Or maybe you came a little later than that, and I don't think we had a chance to kind of tell you about what we
I remember you
witnessed.
talking about it, because I think I might have seen them at the ridge, at the summit. Actually.
Okay.
They caught up to me. Zach, when you were coming down from the summit, did we pass on the ridge?
I did not see you, and so this is the other part of my experience. I was really worried about you. I was like, we broke the cardinal rule. I remember this being in my head. We broke the cardinal rule. We separated. I don't know where Travis is. And I even considered going back up to find you, because I think, like you said, I think you were moving slow and steady wins the race. It was a bluebird day, and so you were just kind of doing your thing. But I remember Eric and I sitting there for quite a while and being like, Eric, do you want me to go back up there and find him? We decided against it, because if you were descending a different route, then we were just going to be more disconnected. And we felt the best thing to do was to stay where we were.
Yeah.
So...
so on the descent, I descended the way that, because, on the way back, you can see the trail you can't see going up. And so I descended the standard route and came back the way you did, and I saw you guys sitting down in the notch, and we reunited there.
Yeah. So our stories reconverge now at the notch. I remember the descent of that gully being crap, kind of going back down that and being like, okay, that's going to suck. And it did. I remember you guys went quite slow at that point. And so I decided, I got to the ridge and I looked behind me and I was like, they look like they're a little ways behind me. And I was like, I'm going to go hit Iron Nipple while they're coming. So like I jogged over. I think I literally jogged at one point. I think I jogged over to Iron Nipple and got to the top of that and then went back down that. And by the time I got back, I think you guys were right at the saddle again. And I was like, oh, that worked out really well. But again, we separated. We shouldn't do that.
Yeah, I remember that's when I realized, like, I remember my first 14er combo was, it was in Missouri Gulch, Oxford, Belford.
Belford and Oxford, yeah.
I remember having a full pack and running down the trail back in my 20s. And so, like, I was like, oh, how far I've fallen. I was descending like an 80-year-old man because I was like, I want my knees.
Yeah.
So I was very, very slow.
Yeah, you guys were very deliberate, which is probably the right way to do it because it is so washed out or hiked off and gravelly. So, yeah, we all had very different experiences. Eric, do you want to kind of take us home here with your final experience of going down the gully, of descending, and then getting the heck out of there?
I remember a little bit about the gully thinking, okay, it'll be good as soon as we're at the bottom of this. And every step was like, okay, this was not fun, but we'll get to the bottom of this, and then we'll hit terra firma, and then everything will be okay. And eventually it was, and then I don't remember much between the saddle and getting back to the campsite again. It was pretty uneventful from what I recall. So anything else, guys, from the saddle going back down to the campsite?
I remember descending what was the first serious incline. I was so thankful when I didn't have to step over boulders and I just got to that meadow. That was rough. Not as rough as descending Bross, but
oh gosh.
It was.
I remember we stayed together kind of as a group, and then at a certain point, I think Eric and Travis were like, Zach, if you need to just go on, just go on. And for some reason, I felt good that day. And I was like, okay. And so I just kind of took off. And I think we actually permanently separated at a certain point on the descent.
Yep.
And I made my way to the car and drove out. And I actually called Eric's wife for him, told him he was going to be late. I remember us descending and the descent being unremarkable, especially compared to earlier in the day where we had very different experiences of what I would call a pretty difficult mountain. I remember the weather just being absolutely bluebird and perfect. For a day in August, there wasn't a cloud in the sky. So it was actually really pretty little descent. And that valley, I kept looking over my shoulder at the valley, and that was really pretty. So yeah, interesting that we all have very different tales of the same mountain. 3 different paths to roughly the same experience.
And with that, I think we should go to what's always my favorite segment of a mountain discussion. And this wasn't even my idea. Zach, you came up with this idea forever ago. I think when we talked about Uncompahgre, you said, you know what? I'm going to get a little philosophical here. And if the mountain was a song, Eric, what song would it be? Travis, you should kick us off. If Mount Lindsey was a song, what song would it be?
I was kind of debating between, do I want to go with the more inspirational Creed, Can You Take Me Higher? Or Joe Walsh, Rocky Mountain Way?
Yeah.
I would land on Joe Walsh's Rocky Mountain Way. Couldn't get much higher.
Yeah,
but
you've chosen wisely, Travis.
So that would be my pick. Rocky Mountain Way is better than the way we had. Eric and I have always had kind of a running joke. Whenever we hit a kind of sketchy path, I would make a complaint, like I was filing a complaint to the local alderman. I was like, can someone get in some guardrails here? Sidewalk? Escalator? Hello? And so
that's where that comes from. Eric will do that when we're hiking together, and I'm like, he loves that bit, and I'm like, where is that coming from? And now I know the origin story. That's great.
It came from Long's Peak. We were coming down the summit of Long's Peak, and Travis is like, I got to call the mayor, man. They need to put an escalator or something in this mess because this is hard. That was great.
That's good stuff. Eric, in my best Barbara Walters voice, if this hike was a tree, what kind of tree would it be? If this hike was a song, what kind of song would it be?
So generally, I end up with very esoteric, strange songs for this little bit, and today is no different. So the first band I ever saw in concert is actually from Oklahoma originally. They are the Flaming Lips. If you guys have ever heard of them.
Oh, with old Wayne leading the band, doing a lot of drugs.
Yes, he's a character. So in 2002, the Flaming Lips release an album called Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots, and it gets all this critical acclaim, and there's a song on there called Do You Realize, that I think most Gen Xers, if they heard the song, they're like, oh, I remember that song, and it's been in some car commercials and such. But the opening track on that album is a song called Fight Test. And I was debating between that song and a song from a band called Mute Math called Blood Pressure, and in that song, they just talk about their blood pressure rising for different reasons. And in the gully, my blood pressure was going way up. But I'm going to go with Fight Test because it tells this story of a guy who is lamenting the loss of a love due to not fighting for her when another man comes along and tries to take her away. And he just basically lets this guy take his love interest away. And he doesn't fight, and he doesn't try to win her back or say, hey, I really care about you. He doesn't do any of that. He just lets this other guy come in and woo her away. And even though at the top of the gully, I had it, I was done, there was really no way I was going to go on. Afterwards, there is this slight tinge of regret, but could I have just found a little bit more of a boost of energy or a little bit of strength in those knees to just carry on and try and get to the summit?
In hindsight, you always feel that way, but at the time, you are captive to your feelings.
Exactly. And I let my feelings take over and say, nope, not today, my friend, not today. So yeah, I'm going with a tale of some regret, and I wish I could go back and change it. I don't ruminate on that. I don't look back and say, oh, what a bad decision I made. Because I know, like you said, Zach, in the moment, there was no way it was going to happen. But yeah, looking back, there's occasional times where I think, I wish I could have come up with just a little bit more to make it happen. So I'm going to go with Fight Test from the Flaming Lips. And Zachary, what is your song for Mount Lindsey?
Well, this is more of our diverging stories. Despite all of the weird gully and the wind and these dorks from Ohio kicking blocks down, I had a fabulous day on that mountain. It was just perfect weather. I loved the views. It was the last big hike I did that year because I think I went back to school and started teaching right after that. And I remember driving out. I don't get this feeling often, but man, I was, to pull a John Denver lyric, I was Rocky Mountain high, man. I felt so good. I remember feeling just like floating on air after that. And so I'm going to go with a song that I haven't done here before, but it's not esoteric at all. It's Katrina and the Waves, Walking on Sunshine.
Yes.
I felt like $1 million after I got done with that hike. I thought it doesn't get much higher, Travis. I thought this was great. I summited Lindsey and the Iron Nipple, beautiful valley. The weather was perfect. I got to hang out with you, Eric, and have like an extended lunch. I was just feeling so good that day. And I know you guys weren't, and I'm sorry. Yeah, I think just Walking on Sunshine, everybody knows that song. It's just pure effervescent goodness. And that's just kind of how I felt that day. I felt really good. Lindsey is, I think, capable of holding together all three of our stories. Like I think you can have weird days, good days, and bad days on that mountain, and they can all be simultaneous. I think we all experienced very different mountain in the same way that day. But yeah, for me, Walking on Sunshine. Whoa.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, perhaps as a brief coda, we could have started with this, or end with this. Zach, we like to talk about places to eat after the hike. And Travis, you and I beforehand, the night before, we pulled off at 25, stopped right off the road, right before Walsenburg, and we had Taco Bell. That's all I got. I got nothing else for Walsenburg.
We perpetually throw shade at Walsenburg, and I'm going to do it again. There's just no good food there, man. You go through Walsenburg, if you're coming from the south or from really even the Front Range, I guess you could cut over from Pueblo to Westcliff. I don't know why you do that. And then you go to Gardner, and then you kind of cut in from Gardner in towards the Lily Lake trailhead. But there's just nothing good to eat in Walsenburg. I suggest if you're coming from the north, get something in Pueblo. If you're coming from the south, get something in Trinidad. And there are some options in Trinidad. There's a Chinese food place there that I enjoy. But I think you guys did Taco Bell. I think I did McDonald's. I may have had some nuggets and some fries before I showed up at the trailhead that night. That's solid pre-hike food. It's got all your food groups. Salt, salt, and salt.
Carbs.
Yeah, carbs and fat. Yeah, I have nothing to recommend. I don't know, Travis, do you have a hidden gem in Walsenburg? He's nodding no.
Well, guys, any other thoughts about our, to some extent, individual but also group journey on Mount Lindsey? Anything else we want to talk about?
I just want to say Lindsey's in such a beautiful area. I know we said it near the beginning, kind of got lost, but hot dog, that Huerfano Valley is gorgeous. The views to Blanca and Ellingwood, that is very Alpine-esque in the Alps kind of style. It's just a really beautiful valley. The hike up is beautiful. The views from the top are beautiful. It is well worth the effort, pain, and maybe the regret that will be incurred on that peak. The views are sensational. Go there and just enjoy and take your time in that lower valley because it's really one of the special valleys of Colorado.
I would add, if I went back there, going up the Lake Como Road is delightful. That's in that group, and the Great Sand Dunes National Park nearby right for national park buffs. That's a good area.
Yep, that's an attraction down there. Definitely make your way there as well. That's cool.
Mm-hmm. Well, guys, this has been a lot of fun. Travis, thank you for joining us, putting up with our tomfoolery for a while here. It's fun to catch up with you, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking me on.
Yeah, it's good to see you again, Travis. Great to hear your side of the story here. I'm glad we got to kind of retroactively go back to this experience.
Yeah, it's good to see you again.
Zach, that was a lot of fun. What are your thoughts in closing on Lindsey?
Man, a lot to think about there. First of all, Lindsey's great peak. I hope everybody goes and does it. But as our episode showed, not without its potential perils. Some rockfall Ohioans who like to kick said rocks. The potential for very different experiences of the same mountain. I really enjoyed reconnecting with Travis, who I haven't seen or talked to since we had that hike. That was a lot of fun to kind of do it in that way. Do you have any thoughts, Eric?
I loved Lindsey, even not having summited it. It was a lot of fun. It was a beautiful area. It was great on a personal level to connect the two worlds of Zach and Travis together and to be able to tackle a mountain with the three of us. That was a lot of fun. So yeah, and that was a fun episode to recap and kind of reconnect with Travis and kind of bring up old memories and tell stories. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that peak and that day, and I'm glad we kind of got to relive that a little bit. So, Travis, thank you so much for coming on the pod and talking to us and telling your stories, and we really appreciated the time that you gave to us there. So,
for sure,
Eric, if people want to tell us other obscure Japanese film references and how they relate to hiking Colorado's high points, how can they get a hold of us?
These might be very brief calls if we get those. Our listeners can email us at greensandbluespodcast@gmail.com. We love getting emails from our listeners about any sort of topics. And we've gotten a few emails recently, and it's been a lot of fun to hear from folks. Or you can find us on our website, greensandbluespodcast.podbean.com, where you can leave us a voicemail. You can find YouTube links and Facebook links and all sorts of other ways to connect with us and listen to us. We love hearing from our listeners and getting your perspectives on Lindsey or anything else that we're talking about. That was a massive screw up.
No, we're keeping
Um,
that. We're keeping that, Eric. That's good. Thank you guys so much for continuing to listen to us through the summer months. Yeah, I'm not going to let you edit that out. And we wish you guys all the best with the last of your summer hikes. And we'll see you again next time, where we'll be talking about some epic summer fails and maybe some successes.